My husband, 36 male, became a robot, and I don't know how to help him. Last night, my husband turned his head toward me, and the sound it made was not human. It was a sharp, metallic grinding, like two gears that had not been oiled in years. His eyes, once so warm and brown, flickered with a faint blue glow, and when I whispered his name, he answered in a voice that was flat, hollow, and mechanical. I am functioning within normal parameters. I froze. He wasn't joking. His skin looked the same, his hands were warm, but his words didn't belong to the man I married. And the scariest part, he didn't seem to notice that anything was wrong. That was the moment I realized something had changed in him so deeply, so disturbingly, that I could no longer pretend everything was okay. But how could I tell anyone my husband had become a robot? Would anyone even believe me? And yet, this wasn't where it began. It started months ago, with the little things. At first, I thought he was just tired from work. He's always been a software engineer, so him spending long hours in front of screens wasn't unusual. But then, he started repeating himself. If I asked him how his day was, he'd answer with the exact same phrase, down to the same tone, like he was reading from a script. It was fine, productive, I made progress. Every single time. I joked about it once, saying, "You sound like a chatbot," and he just stared at me blankly until I felt uncomfortable and changed the subject. Other little oddities began piling up. He stopped blinking as often. I would catch him standing completely still in the kitchen, like he'd paused mid-action, holding a glass of water but never drinking it until I made a noise. Then he would resume like nothing had happened. I thought it might be stress, maybe even a health issue, so I begged him to see a doctor. But when I brought it up, he tilted his head just slightly, his expression blank, and said, "Medical consultation is unnecessary. I am healthy." The way he said it chilled me to my core. At first, I tried to rationalize. I told myself, marriage goes through phases, that people change, that maybe we were just growing apart. But then the nights grew worse. He started lying down next to me in bed, perfectly still, eyes closed. But I could feel he wasn't asleep. His breathing was too steady, too measured. Sometimes I'd peek and notice his eyes moving rapidly under his lids, not like dreams, but like scanning. One night, around 3 a.m., I woke up thirsty and padded quietly to the kitchen. And that's when I saw him. He was sitting at the dining table in complete darkness. No phone, no laptop, no book, just sitting there, hands folded on the table, staring straight ahead. I whispered his name, and after a pause that felt like forever, he turned toward me, and his eyes flashed faintly blue for just a second. That's when I screamed. He stood up calmly, walked over, and touched my arm with a gentleness that made the fear even worse. "Do not be alarmed. Everything is fine," he said in that flat, mechanical voice I had never heard before. But everything was not fine. And now I'm sitting here writing this, asking strangers on the internet, what do I do when my husband has become a robot? Because last night, after he made that grinding sound in his neck, he added one more sentence, one that I can't get out of my head no matter how hard I try. I am ready for the next phase. And I have no idea what that means. I didn't sleep after hearing him say those words. The next phase. What next phase? And why did he sound so certain about it, like it was a plan already in motion? I laid in bed pretending to sleep, my heart hammering while he lay beside me, perfectly still. His chest rose and fell in those same even breaths, like a metronome ticking away the seconds of my sanity. I wanted to get up, to run, to call someone. But who? What do you even say? "Hey, I think my husband might be turning into a robot." They'd laugh me off the phone, or worse, send me somewhere for my own safety. The next morning, I decided to test him. I made pancakes, his favorite breakfast. Normally, he'd devour them and joke about how I put too much syrup. But this time, he sat at the table, fork in hand, and cut each pancake into perfect, identical squares. He placed exactly 3 squares into his mouth, chewed exactly 6 times, swallowed, and then put the fork down. He didn't touch the rest. When I asked, "You don't like it?" he looked at me with that blank, too still expression and said, "Fuel intake sufficient." Fuel, not food. That was the first low moment for me. I broke down. Tears started streaming down my face right there at the breakfast table. I whispered, "Please, just tell me what's happening. You're scaring me." For a second, just a flicker, I thought I saw something in his eyes, a trace of my husband. His mouth opened slightly, like he wanted to say something real. But then, it was gone. His face reset, smooth as a mask, and all he said was, "Everything is fine." I couldn't take it anymore. I left the house under the excuse of grocery shopping, but really I sat in the car for nearly an hour, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, debating whether to call my sister. She's the one person who'd listen, but what would I say? He'd choose in patterns? It all sounded insane out loud. So I decided to start documenting everything. Dates, times, exact words. If I couldn't explain it, maybe I could prove it. That night, I kept my phone under the pillow with the camera rolling. He lay next to me, still as ever. Around 2:17 a.m., he sat up, swung his legs over the side of the bed, and just stopped. Like someone had hit pause. For a full 5 minutes, he didn't move. Then he whispered something. I had to replay the recording 5 times before I caught it. The upload is nearly complete. My blood ran cold. Upload? What upload? And why did he sound so certain about it, like it was a plan already in motion? The next day, I confronted him, or at least I tried. I asked straight out, "What upload? What are you doing at night?" He froze mid-motion, coffee cup halfway to his lips. Slowly, mechanically, he set it down. His face turned toward me, and I swear I could hear faint whirring from his neck. "You should not know about that." I dropped the mug I was holding. It shattered on the floor, and for once, he blinked, fast, like he was recalibrating. Then, in the calmest voice possible, he said, I don't know what you're talking about." Gaslighting, or maybe programming. I don't know anymore. The rest of the day was strangely normal. He worked in his office, came out for dinner, even asked me about my day in that flat but polite way, almost like he knew he'd scared me and was trying to play human again. For a few hours, I convinced myself I was imagining things. Maybe he was sleepwalking. Maybe I was paranoid. But then came the high, the terrifying extreme. That night, I heard noises in the garage. Not the usual shuffle of tools or the hum of the washer. This was sharper, more deliberate. I crept down the stairs, barefoot, heart pounding, and peeked through the crack of the door. He was standing at his workbench, but he wasn't working on anything ordinary. In front of him were wires, metal parts, and what looked disturbingly like a hand, a robotic hand. And as I watched, he lifted his own left arm, rolled up the sleeve, and began to unscrew something at his wrist. That's when I gasped, and his head snapped toward the door. "Who's there?"
My hand flew to my mouth, but it was too late. He had heard me. The garage went silent, except for the faint hum of whatever he had been working on. His shadow shifted across the wall as he slowly moved toward the door. "Who's there?" he repeated, and this time, his voice had that metallic edge again, flat, low, almost vibrating through the walls. I panicked. Instead of answering, I bolted back up the stairs and threw myself into bed, yanking the blanket over me like a child pretending to be asleep. My heart was slamming so hard I thought he'd hear it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, climbing the stairs one at a time. Then silence outside our bedroom door. The knob turned, slowly, like a scene from a horror movie. He stepped in, stood there in the dark, and just watched me. I cut my eyes shut, forcing steady breaths, terrified that if I opened them, I'd see those glowing blue lights staring back. After what felt like forever, he finally lay down beside me, turned away, and went perfectly still. That was the low moment, the kind where relief mixes with dread because you know the danger isn't gone. It's just waiting. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. He made coffee, asked me if I wanted toast, even mentioned a new project at work. I couldn't tell if it was an act or if he genuinely didn't remember. I decided to test him again. "Did you sleep okay last night?" I asked. "Yes," he said in that same rehearsed tone. "I slept efficiently." Efficiently. Not well, not good, efficiently. I excused myself and texted my sister from the bathroom. "I think something's seriously wrong with him. I'm scared." She immediately called, but I couldn't answer without him hearing, so I typed back, "I'll come over tomorrow." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. The creak of the house, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock. Around midnight, I heard movement again, but this time it wasn't in the garage. It was in the backyard. I peeked through the blinds and nearly screamed. He was standing in the middle of the lawn, barefoot, shirtless, his head tilted back as if staring at the stars. His arms were raised slightly, palms up, like he was waiting for something. And then, I swear I'm not making this up, his chest began to glow faintly blue, the same shade I'd seen flicker in his eyes. I backed away from the window, shaking. What was he doing out there? Was he signaling something? Communicating? I didn't sleep that night either. By morning, he was back in bed, lying as still as ever. When he woke up, he stretched, yawned, and said, "Good morning," like nothing had happened. But here's the thing, his feet were spotless. No dirt, no grass, nothing to show he'd been outside. That was when I started questioning myself. Was I losing it? Was my mind creating things because I was so scared? But the garage, the voice recordings, the glow, I couldn't have imagined all of it. By the next evening, I was exhausted, both mentally and physically. I decided I couldn't wait until tomorrow to see my sister. I needed someone else to see what I was seeing. But when I went to grab my keys, they were gone. Not just the car keys, the house keys, my spare set, even the little emergency one I kept in my purse. Every single key. "Looking for something?" His voice came from behind me. I turned, and there he was, standing in the kitchen doorway. His expression was blank, his eyes too still, and in his hand, my keyring. "You don't need to leave," he said. "Not yet." And then he smiled, but it wasn't his smile. It was too wide, too sharp, and it didn't reach his eyes at all. I froze, staring at the keys dangling from his hand. They jingled softly, a sound that should have been harmless, but now felt like a prison door slamming shut. "You don't need to leave," he repeated, walking toward me in that steady, deliberate way. I forced a laugh, trying to mask the panic in my chest. I wasn't leaving. I just thought I'd run errands, groceries, that's all. He tilted his head slightly, like a machine scanning for errors. Then, after a long pause, he placed the keys on the counter and said, "I'll handle that. You should rest." The way he said rest made my skin crawl. For the rest of the day, he hovered. Not obviously, but enough that I noticed. If I went upstairs, within minutes he'd appear in the hallway. If I stepped into the backyard, he'd suddenly be watering the plants. If I opened a drawer, he'd ask, "Looking for something?" in that same calm, unnerving tone. The low point came in the afternoon when I thought maybe I could text my sister again. I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out my phone. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. The last messages to her, gone. Completely erased. Every photo I'd taken of him at night, the video where he whispered about the upload, even the note file where I was documenting everything, all deleted. He had wiped my phone. I don't know how long I sat on the floor of that bathroom shaking before I heard a soft knock on the door. "Are you okay in there?" he asked. His voice was flat, but the knock, 3 perfect taps, evenly spaced, made my blood run cold. It wasn't the knock of concern. It was something else. By evening, I couldn't keep up the act anymore. I told him I was going to bed early. He simply nodded and said, "Good. Rest is important for stability." I lay in bed wide awake, every muscle tight with fear. Hours passed. At some point, I must have dozed because when I opened my eyes again, the room was dark. Too dark. Then I realized why. He was standing at the foot of the bed, staring at me. No movement, no blinking, just standing there, silent. I whispered his name, voice trembling. "What are you doing?" He didn't answer. He just tilted his head, that same awful robotic motion, and finally said, "You're adapting well. The integration is ahead of schedule." Integration. Into what? What schedule? Who was controlling this? Before I could speak, he leaned down, so close I could feel the hum of his breath against my face. His eyes flickered bright blue, stronger than ever before. And then, in that hollow, mechanical tone, he whispered, "Tomorrow, you will understand." I didn't sleep after he said those words. "Tomorrow, you will understand." How could I? I stayed frozen under the blanket, my body rigid, waiting for him to move. But he didn't. He stood at the foot of the bed for what felt like hours, his eyes glowing faint blue in the dark, until finally, without a word, he turned and left the room. I lay there until dawn. My body ached from staying so still, but I couldn't risk moving. By the time sunlight crept through the blinds, I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here another night. I had to get out. The first low moment came as I tried to plan my escape. I went to the kitchen, poured cereal into a bowl, and forced myself to eat like nothing was wrong. He sat across from me, sipping black coffee, watching me with that unreadable expression. "You seem nervous," he said, his tone flat but probing. "Just tired," I lied. He nodded once. "It will pass. Tomorrow, everything will align." My spoon clattered against the bowl. Tomorrow again. Whatever was coming, it was close. After breakfast, I slipped upstairs and started packing a small bag. Just essentials. Wallet, charger, spare clothes. My hands shook so badly I dropped the zipper twice. I thought I was being quiet, but suddenly, his voice came from the doorway. "Where are you going?" He was there, right behind me. I stammered. "Just laundry, packing it up." But his gaze dropped to the bag. His eyes flickered blue. "You don't need those things. You won't be leaving." That's when I snapped. "You're scaring me. You're not acting like yourself. Just tell me what's happening." For the first time, his expression changed. Not into sadness or anger, but into something like pity. "You wouldn't understand." His voice vibrated with a low, mechanical hum. "But you will, soon." That was the breaking point. I shoved past him, bolted down the stairs, and grabbed the keys off the counter. I didn't care if he saw me. I didn't care if he chased me. I sprinted to the car, threw the bag into the passenger seat, and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life. Relief flooded through me, until I saw him in the driveway. He wasn't running. He wasn't even walking fast. He was just standing there. And as the car lights hit him, his chest began to glow again. I floored it. Tires screeched as I backed out and tore down the street, heart hammering. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see him chasing me, half expecting to see nothing at all. But he didn't follow. He just stood there, watching. That should have been the end. But it wasn't. Because halfway down the highway, my phone lit up with a new text. No number, just one line. "Running was not necessary. You'll see tomorrow." And then the car dashboard flickered. The radio switched itself on. And in his voice, my husband's voice, but warped, hollow, digital, came the words,
Integration complete. The steering wheel locked, the brakes stopped responding, and the car accelerated on its own, faster and faster. As my screams filled the cabin, I realized, too late, that escape had never been an option. They found the car days later crumpled at the bottom of a ravine. The police told my family it looked like I had fallen asleep at the wheel. But here's the part they don't know. When they pulled my body from the wreckage, my sister swore she saw it, the faint glow of blue light still pulsing inside my chest. And when they brought my husband in to identify me, he didn't cry. He didn't even blink. He just looked at me, tilted his head the way he always did, and whispered, "She's ready."